In that case, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is February 20th, regular Board of Selectmen meeting. Present is myself, Bob Carlson, the first selectman, also Selectman Brett Mastriani, Selectwoman Nicole Porter, and our new Admin Finance Director, Laura Brown. Welcome. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Anybody online with a hand up? None that I can see. Okay. Okay, with no public comment, let's look at minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the Town of North Stonington's Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from February 6, 2024 at 6:30 PM held at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
Okay, is there
A
any
second?
any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from February 6th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, second.
So I'll make a motion to approve the Town of North Stonington's joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. It was a special meeting for the Board of Selectmen held here at the North Stonington Education Center. It was not via Zoom on February 7th, 2024, held at 7 PM as written.
Second?
Okay, it's been second. The only thing is, I believe that meeting was Zoom, Nicole.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah,
you
so
want me to
yeah,
amend?
there was hybrid and we did record it. So,
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
so then that would just amend your motion
Yep.
to accept. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Are there any selectmen comments? Hearing none. First selectmen comments. Something I'd like to say is welcome to Laura Brown, our new admin finance director. And I am happy to say that in the first time that since we have been selectmen, every chair is full at town hall and everyone's very competent and then some in their jobs. We have not been able to say that since we became selectmen. So either there's been an opening or maybe someone was and is trained as we'd like them to be, put it that way. But I'm happy to report that we have a full house with very competent people, and with the new additions of Laura and of course Susan, and as a planner, we're in good shape. And knock on wood, we keep it that way for a while. Thank you, Laura. And if you need to speak, other than saying thank you, you can use a microphone just so we can have you recorded. And if we ask you a question about the budget numbers or something, okay, so just hit that button, put the mic about 6 inches from your mouth, and you're good to go. Thank you. All right, so tonight, I was asked by Vilma if she could do a presentation. She saw the CLA proposed parking lot behind Town Hall, which we brought to a capital meeting as a place to add parking for behind Town Hall. It was lowering down that grass area, moving the retaining wall, and maybe getting a parking lot that could hold upwards of 18 to 22 cars, depending on how you laid out the parking lot. There was 2 parking lot drawings. It's actually going to be in the POCD also. I think that's where you saw it, at the POCD. Yes, I think it was a POCD hearing that Juliet had done, I believe. So anyway, with that said, so Vilma said, I understand what you're trying to do, but I think I have a better plan. Can I come to talk to the Board of Selectmen? So she's here this evening.
This is behind Old Town Hall.
Yes, behind Old Town Hall.
Okay.
Did you say this is not behind Old Town Hall? Okay.
Is this on now?
Doesn't,
The light's on. maybe it's just, hello? That sounds like it's on?
Yep.
Okay, so, first off, my reaction to the drawing, that you showed me was, that you're kind of defacing the center of our historic village by adding parking there. You're impacting the brook. You're gonna have a fun time moving the wall because of the height of that hill that's back there, et cetera, et cetera. Just not a good place for it. I would say you're probably ruining the view from the brewery out there. I don't know that they want to look at cars. I know they need parking, but they don't necessarily want to have that be what they're looking out on. And I'm not, don't pretend to speak for you guys, but that's like, it's just not a good place for that. I also have a personal connection because my grandparents owned that property and I spent my childhood in the gardens that were up there, which could be nice. So anyway, how could you get some parking in that wasn't such a huge amount of work and would also not deface town hall? So what I thought about was, because I'm also very concerned about that, the commercial zone that's right there that goes from a Red Onion on. We had proposed several years ago to try to make that mixed use. And I had personally worked with a developer who unfortunately died, Michael Blair from Stonington, and the property owner and Juliet to try to get something happening in there. And that's still a possibility because the people who are in Red Onion now would like to do a mixed use thing. But one of the things that Blair had said was to make that palatable to somebody to rent, they have to feel like they're part of the village. They have to be able to walk into the village. You need to connect that section. So that's also going on in the back of my head. But anyway, if you look at the second page, if you're going down Main Street towards Route 2, that section of Route 2 from Red Onion on is the most accident prone because of all the curb cuts. And so I propose that you think about making a cul-de-sac on that end, which is what I show you before and after. You can see the GPS. By the way, I am a landscape designer. I am not a landscape architect or an engineer. You would have to have someone, go into this. But you could make a cul-de-sac there and do parking on one-lane parking. If you look at the first page from where the little red dot is on it, on the street, beyond that is all town land. And you have 670 feet of frontage on that road. And you could put parking on that. You can go to a cul-de-sac single lane. If you think about when you drive down in Stonington Borough to the point, you have single lane, two-way travel where you can pull over. And you would have enough asphalt to park cars along there. You would park them in front of the town land, essentially, and you would leave spaces to pull out in front of the driveways that are there now. So you might leave like a 30-foot space there where you couldn't park so that for ease of that. And that would give you over 30 parking spaces without doing a whole lot of work. You'd have to close off the inroad from Route 2. You'd probably have to do a little song and dance with Condot, I'm guessing, because of the connection to Route 2, but I'm sure they would be thrilled to have less curb cuts going in there. And then you would have traffic going out where the stoplight is. So it would be much safer entry and exit from Route 2 to the village. And so you would have two-way traffic in here, and the only people that would be going beyond that red dot towards the cul-de-sac would be people parking and the three houses that have driveways there. So it would be slow there's a little incline there, but it's pretty much by that point, you can see the rest of the road, but you would still leave a pullout. So if somebody's coming out, you would pull over like you do in the borough. And without a lot of, physical changes, you would, you'd have over 30 parking spaces. So that was my thought of doing something that's less impactful to the, permanently be facing the town.
So just a
Yeah.
couple of comments, and then obviously Nicole and Brett would have comments. What do you say to the people like conservation that likes that 3-lot buffer coming into town, and by putting 30 cars in front of it, now you've kind of ruined the look of that buffer? And also the people that live on that road, now they have to go back into the village and turn around and come back out again. They just can't go out to the Red Onion exit. And then the other thing is, with Velma, is how, so we've got the Historic Society, you've got the brewery, and you've got Town Hall. How does this parking help those areas when, I mean, we've
It's-
offered the Baptist Church for parking occasionally, and people don't want to walk that far. So how do we help parking in the busiest part of town, which is the Town Hall and the brewery?
So, I think, people don't want to walk that far. Sorry, I mean, it's not that far. If you were in any other town, that would be nothing. It's like 2 blocks. It's not a lot of, this is, first of all, I'm not applying to do this or anything. It's just an idea of where you could get some parking from. So I have no dog in the race. Is what I think.
I have another question. So you're part of the Historic Society, though,
Yes.
correct? They have a brand new lot, and I've asked the Historic Society, why can't the brewery employees only, not the patrons, the employees only that work there, why can't they park in the Historic Society lot, which would open up 6 to 8 spaces, or take the piece of land you have up above near the, behind the highway garage, turn that into a municipal parking lot and have a walkway down into the village?
Okay.
You're shaking your head no, but why is that
No.
not? Why?
Because first of all, we're there all the time. It just because we're open on certain days doesn't mean there aren't people there constantly going in and out and
But that
working
parking
there.
lot holds about 15 cars. The new
No, it
parking lot.
doesn't. It holds, well.
How many
depends.
people, if so,
You know,
he,
This, I'm not here to speak on behalf of the
no,
Historical
no, you're looking,
Society.
you're
I
asking
would
for an
love to do
alternative
that.
plan, right? And I'm,
Right,
so I'm
and
throwing
that's-
another alternative plan back to you. Why doesn't the Historic Society work with the town to give us some spots in their parking lot for the employees of the brewery, which would open up 6 or 7 spots, which we may not have to do a parking lot behind Town Hall? Why is
Okay,
that a no?
I'm not here to talk about that, and I'm not going to talk about that because I'm not authorized to talk about that by the board. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't answer that personally. I don't think it's a good idea because of how much we're in there working and using that space. I don't think that we can just give up space in there.
Okay, so
So
I'll have that
but you're
conversation.
not gonna-
I'll have the conversation with Dick Seeger. That's all, with the
You'll
president.
need to have it with the board, probably, because I don't think Dick's authorized to have that conversation.
No, but he could bring it to
by
the board, correct?
Yeah.
He's the president.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that, it would have. to be
Okay.
that.
I have
But
no other
I don't think
questions.
that's a realistic possibility. But anyway, the point is, the people who are living up here right now have people speeding past their houses. You've put in the speed bumps, but it's still a lot of traffic. They're going to have less traffic, so it's a trade-off to have cars parked there occasionally.
We actually have
They
more,
have cars going there all the time.
we have more speeding in Rocky Hollow because there's no speed hump.
Yeah. Well, that's
And now
your,
we're having all the traffic go down Rocky Hollow.
yes.
That would be my only concern is that I don't know what percentage that would increase the Rocky Hollow traffic, but it would be a
That's-
decent amount of traffic.
It would be
going that way,
more.
yeah.
Than it is now, but I think a lot of people go that way anyway because of the light,
Yeah.
that need, want the security of, if you're making a left turn there, it's really a bad idea to go out of Main Street.
Right. I mean, for
Yeah.
discussion purposes,
Yeah,
I would personally prefer that be a one-way going into the village compared to the cul-de-sac. That way, you're not
Right.
worried about people taking the left. People are going that way.
That would, I
into the
think, be
village.
harder for the people who lived on the road.
Yeah.
Like, how are they coming in from North?
Right, that, yeah,
They're making that left turn.
yeah, those few
So,
cars,
but
yeah.
anyway, it's something to think about where you're not cutting into the hillside and taking down a stone wall and doing all this stuff. It's kind of there, you know, and there's not much you have to do except right at the end if you did it as a, but
Well, no-
you could decide.
that proposed plan that's in the P O C D would not be something happening right away. I mean, we're talking,
Right.
if it happened at all, it'd be 2 or 3 years down the road because
That it would still be bad 2 or 3 years down the road. We have this unique 19th century village that we really need to do everything we can to preserve the feel of it. It's pretty amazing, and I think we want to be really careful about how we go about that. I mean, you talk about they need 6 spaces for the employees. Why don't they park in the Baptist church? If you need 6 spaces and that's the only issue, what, they can't walk. a
well,
block
they
for
can't,
extra.
the Baptist church doesn't always allow it because they have meetings there at night and school.
But here's again, right, because you're trying, you know, your solutions to impose on private property is ameliorated by using town property where you're going to be parking in front of. There are no curbs cuts there. The town owns that piece of, all these 3 pieces of land, and you can see the frontage is quite considerable. So you could come up with upwards of 30 cars.
Well,
Oh,
that-
But anyway, I don't want to debate
that's
it
okay.
with you.
Nicole, do you have any questions before we,
Yeah, so the 3 parcels that you have underlined in
Right.
red on page 1.
Yeah,
So are
Those are
you
all sound.
suggesting that we cut into
No.
some of those to create the cul-de-sac?
no,
Or use the existing roads, just close it off at the end with a corner? And then I'm assuming some type of curbing and buffer from Route 2 so that it
yes, you would.
prevents people from going
From-
down.
Right, so you'd have to close off the entrance from Route 2 with some type of curb there. You would probably cut a little bit into the
That first
that
parcel.
first
Yeah.
the property closest to Route 2, although I'm not sure from, you know, somebody at Condot once told me that GIS stands for Get It Surveyed, you know, jokingly, but I'm not really sure where, from this map, where the property line is. You conceivably have to cut off a little bit of this corner of the last lot.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't propose cutting into the land that's there. That on the frontage, on most of it, I would propose just using the asphalt as parking, a la the road into the point,
Yeah.
which is, by the way, 20 feet wide going into Stonington.
I
Point.
do, I think it's really creative. I do fear that people won't want to walk that. I mean, on a beautiful day, I think that that's fine, but frankly, if I'm going to the brewery and I'm parking up here and it's inclement weather, I'm like, I just won't end up parking up there. I do,
if you're gonna do that, you might as well park it here at the school, right? Out here where the pickleball courts are and, might as well park
Yeah.
there. It's closer to the brewery than.
yeah.
down there.
Although I am a little bit unsure what the proposed, it's not, I've heard rumors before that we're looking at some type of parking area extended behind Old Town Hall. Are we suggesting cutting into that? Because it really is, an incline, right?
Yeah,
We
it's a
have.
very tall hill back there.
Yeah,
that
so
goes down to-
are we suggesting cutting into the hillside and putting, or having a second higher lot behind where the few that we have behind
So
town?
the second higher lot was option 1. We thought about that first. And then actually Juliet came with the idea was instead of having that and then have cars possibly drive off it, because now you'd have to have some sort of a protection so the car wouldn't drive and fall 7 feet
Yeah.
down, is to move that retaining wall, take that whole piece of land down to the same level as the rest of the parking lot.
Okay,
And that way you would, you could enter it right off of Avery Lane and it could get 18 to 20
Okay.
cars in there. But I can show you that plan and Juliet has it because it's part of the P O C D, so. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
for another day.
I was just regarding this a little bit, and what we're talking about behind town hall, I'm not sure why we would have that in the POCD yet, if we haven't even discussed it or did it, and same with I noticed the parking lot behind here was in the POCD. We haven't even gotten anywhere near that.
So
level yet.
that we discussed the parking lot back here at steep meetings.
Right.
And right now, actually, the Early Learning Center is looking at a possible grant that would incorporate that into her grant, so that then she didn't end up paying for it. So that's still a possibility because we voted
Right.
against it during the steep grant. It's in the POCD as, and again, it hasn't been approved, as potential parking spaces in the village.
So
I think we
that'd be a
also-
POCD conversation, I guess, how it made it way in there and like that, but.
I think she's, when you look at, well, it's no different than when you drew at the last POCD, when they were drawing what it might look where Little Man's Diner was, what that might look like with a different front. And people, I remember the artists who drew like
Right.
different, it's the same thing. It's like a potential extra parking for the town. I had this, because it was done by an engineer, this one and the one behind Town Hall is possible parking solutions.
And I think we also don't know what the whole area is going to look like. Both what the library plans to do with adding parking and then how we're going to incorporate in the old middle school area. So we don't know, for that matter, I mean, I don't know. 6 of one, half dozen another. You park up where you're suggesting versus all the way here at the school and walking all the way down to the brewery in the middle of town. I mean, it's tough. Without significantly touching things in the village, there's just not a lot of.
So I think that none of these are in stone. They're just saying these are things that are possibilities, but nothing can happen without a series of meetings,
Yeah. Oh,
voting
no.
and
So
discussion.
we'll put this with the other options when we
Yes.
Yeah.
discuss that at some point.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think it's a good alternate plan. I just don't know what kind of feedback we get from it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you'd have to find out. And I think it's important to really think about how you're impacting the historic nature of the village and the views and the river, which parking cars right on top of a river is it's just pollution going into the river. You know, we shouldn't be doing that. And there are other ways of, thinking about things. So I would hope you would keep an open mind and look for better solutions than
I think when we
cutting
get,
down the hill.
I think what we'll end up doing is similar to what we did with the community conversation, determine about demoing the middle school or not, and what we'll eventually do with that property. I think that parking in the village will have a similar type of time given to it. Might be a Saturday morning a year from now or 2 years from now, whenever we really have to address it and how we're going to handle parking in the village, and everyone will be able to come and as we do in a community conversation, everybody will have a chance to weigh in. And
Yeah.
that's how we have all sorts of drawings of possibilities, and this could be one of them. The one behind Town Hall, the one out here, the one where Nicole said where the middle school used to stand, what would we do with parking in that space? So there's a lot of options, some better than others.
Yeah.
But we're not going to sneak a parking lot in on you without you telling you though.
No,
You won't
but-
come here someday and find a
but I'm
parking lot.
saying you found something better and could abandon that, because I think that's just going to be an ugly mess that's polluting and damaging to the village.
Well, thank you for your time. It's always good to listen to someone else's opinion, so thank you. Okay, so, sure, you can.
One, two. Carl Johnston, 8B Rudman Road.
Very good, Velma, so it's a good idea. The only thing I can see the concern of is the 20-foot mark. You're gonna need 30 feet to get 3 cars abreast. 1 car park. Yes, you do. Right, so somebody coming in from the 400 feet down has to wait for somebody way down there to pass. You're looking at parking right here. 1 lane here, this person goes around the cul-de-sac. That's not gonna happen.
So just a suggestion, to get 3 cars to pass, you need 30 feet minimum. one coming down at you, one going down, and one parked on the side. Right now, the bridge in the village is 30 feet, and you can get 3 cars if you move the center lane. That works out perfect. It's always been there since I've been here. But so anyway, that's that. The second thing would be, you've got people being dropped off at the school for the kids, right there at the church. So then people are gonna come in, drop off, turn around and come back out. They're all gonna travel Rocky Hollow twice as much. I think you're gonna increase that by double for stuff coming in and out. And right now, then people are kind of hollering and screaming for a speed bump already. Never mind adding extra traffic. That would be my only concern. Okay? All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Okay, any comments online about this? Seeing none. Let's move to the next, which is old business. Glad to report at this time, there's no vacancies or appointments to be made this evening. Plan of Conservation and Development update. The way we left that was at the last steering committee meeting that we will be having, well, we should say P and Z will be having a public hearing in March. And right now they're going through the steps of, they've got their last rendition with changes that were suggested at the steering committee meeting. They're going through those changes. And then sending those back to Juliet. She's already made some changes in the draft. And then once she's made all the changes, we'll go to a P and Z. As again, this does not go through the select and goes through P and Z. They'll have a meeting in March, and hopefully we can put that to bed for another 10 years. Any comments on Plan of Conservation and Development? Okay. Number 9, Wheel Library renovation. At our last meeting, Selectman Mastriani had suggested that we, instead of moving to the Board of Finance, to have them move it to the next step. We thought we'd go to the Board of Finance and look for a more direction on best ways to handle the financing portion of their project. I had run into Emily Noyes at a basketball game, who then let Amy Kennedy know that that's what we wanted to do. She was confused a little bit. I ran into her at the trivia contest tonight. She asked if we could meet for 5 minutes, which we did. And I let her know that this is what the Board of Selectmen want to do, is we can't rush things. As someone said, there's always time to do things right. So we're going to go to the Board of Finance actually tomorrow evening and start talking about financing. And what do they suggest? So we can go back, bring it back to the Board of Selectmen and talk about, okay, if this project's going to happen, what's the best way to finance it? I have some ideas as far as financing. One idea actually came from Susan Pike, our accounting journalist, who said to me that, hey, the library is asking for $2 million. They're not asking for 2.5 million. If we, the town, goes and gets financing, gets a loan for 10 years, and we pay it back with interest, we're going to be paying close to $2.5 million over 10 years. That's not what the library asked for. A better choice would be to say to the library, and this is just an option, you get the financing, and the town, once you get it, the town then would go into a guarantee with you to say, we'll give you $200,000 a year for 10 years, which is $2 million. It's not 2.5 million, it's 2 million. So they get the financing instead of us. The town gets the financing. We tie up some more debt on the town, which makes it going to make it tougher for us down the road with capital as far as fire company and town garage and so on, because now we're going to owe an extra $2 million with interest for 10 years. This allows them to carry the debt, and we go work in an agreement with them to say, we give you $200,000 a year for 10 years. The taxpayer knows exactly what it costs every year. We know how it will impact we will find out and know how it impacts the mill rate at that point. Just like with any other debt, we put it on the budget under redemption of debt, like we do with the schools and the fire company. And it just is a cleaner way of doing things if it makes it that far. I'm just looking as an optional way, and again, give credit to Susan for this, an optional way to look at it, because the other way, when they say we want the town to give us $2 million and we take the loan out, we're actually giving them 2.5 million because we're paying the interest. Let them pay the interest on their note. And that's what I'm going to suggest tomorrow night to the Board of Finance.
So I thought our conversation with the Board of Finance was going to be a little more robust in regards to when we should be putting this forward. What is is it in this year's budget, next year's budget? If we're moving it forward, we'll decide at that point. But I thought that was gonna be not just the financing part, but when are we looking to do this? What makes sense with the budget process?
I agree, Brett. I think that the whole thing is, yeah, would it go on the same day as a referendum for the budget? Is it going to be after we get through the budget? So that's all part of the discussion. I
Okay.
agree. I just
know
think,
when I saw financing
yeah, so
as the
when,
title,
I think when I explained it to Michael that we wanted direction, and I was talking about the finance, we also want direction on timeline.
all right.
And
just wanted to
when he
be
put it in the agenda, he put it as financing, but yes, timeline also.
clear. So we'll hash this out tomorrow, at least get more
Yeah.
details from them.
So I do worry that the library is not gonna like that option. Knowing that this is a portion of what the entire project's gonna cost, and our assumption, or my assumption, is that they're already gonna be financing a portion of what they're gonna be putting forward. And having to cough up another $500,000, I think is going to, it will impact what they feel they can probably take on. I think that we should, I'm not saying that we shouldn't present that option. It certainly works out better in favor for the townspeople, I think, and it's certainly a cheaper, a more tolerable expense for the town. I worry that the library will be able to take on the additional interest.
So
of-
they're not doing any financing. They have $1 million grant, they have an endowment, and they have fundraising.
Oh.
So they're not doing any financing. This would be the only financing they would do. As far as I know, when I mentioned this to Amy at the trivia night, she did not fall back and say, oh, no, we can't do that. She actually thought it was a reasonable
Okay.
request. We'll see what happens down the road. Second thing is, if they want to do something, they're going to get a yes vote on. Because if they get a no vote, if this goes all the way to a vote and then the the vote is no, then they don't have the $2 million at all. Now they're working on the grant, the fundraising, and the endowment, and they can't do the project. They'll have to do Plan B, whatever that is.
So I love the fact that it's very creative and it's kind of outside the box that we had originally been thinking about. And I think $200,000 a year is easier for the townspeople to swallow, rather than financing $2 million.
Well, I think it's easier to explain how it impacts the mill rate and how it impacts the
Yeah.
individuals, just like we did with the school. But I think it's a long road, and I think, as Brett just said, timeline is going to be important also. And how much do they need? When is this a 3?
Yeah,
I
and the
sent it.
timeline is something that we've talked about that I personally feel like I need a little bit more information on.
I sent them 3 questions that we talked about. I actually sat with Sean Murphy weekend with, what is the timeline? How soon do you need the money? If the plan does not go through, what should plan be? I've not got the answers, and they've had those questions for over 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and there's only 3
So
questions.
they're not slotted to come back to the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance, for that matter, for any other follow-up. Like, they made their presentation, right? They made the ask. It now sits with us and the Board of Finance to try and
They
decide
haven't
next
made the
steps.
presentation to the Board of Finance yet.
Yeah.
So,
Technically, they would only make that to the Board of
so-
Finance if we approve it to
Right.
go to the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
right, so the plan now would be for us to talk to the Board of Finance tomorrow night about timeline and finance, come back to us, then we have to decide when we get the information from the Board of Finance, what's our timeline to send it back to the Board of Finance after discussion. Right now, we're in the middle of the budget season. So what's our timeline to send it back to them? We do that, they'll do a presentation to the Board of Finance at that point.
Okay.
And then the Board of Finance will decide whether they want to move it through or not.
Because this will, I mean, with that option, it is a creative option that cuts down the overall burden on the taxpayers, but it will impact our budget. I mean, either way will impact our budget, but that's almost a $500,000 increase just for the library to keep that going.
Well,
for
if you
years.
figure then their regular budget ask, which is $100,000, which they'll be doing tomorrow night, and the $200,000 a year for 10 years, that is 300,000, and the mill was 600,000. So
Right.
basically between those two, it's a $500,000, it's a third of a mill if you're just looking at the project. And if it doesn't pass, what's plan B? And I've yet to hear what that is. So hopefully And we'll probably bring that up tomorrow with the Board of Finance, because we would like to see a Plan A, which is what they want to do. What also puts Plan B, is it just maybe the second floor HVAC and additional bathroom?
Okay.
So I don't know what they would do and what they wouldn't do if the town says no, now they have $2 million instead of 4, what will they do with the $2 million? I'd like to know what that is. I'm sure the town would like to know that also, so. Okay, any other discussion, anything online? on
So
that?
just from our timeline, tomorrow we'll talk with the Board of Finance about how to present it to the town, options for financing, have a discussion about it in general. And then really, we need to bring it back to our board to make a decision to move it forward. Okay, I just want to understand the timeline.
I just think it'd be easier for the Board of Selectmen to discuss it if we know what the Board of Finance is thinking, if they agree on what plan as far as financing and timeline is when we want to bring it forward. That'll help us know how we're going to address it going forward.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, if that's, anything else on that? Okay, so on the budget discussion, number 10, unfortunately, I had my cuts, and they're on a budget somewhere, possibly on my desk at Town Hall, but they don't seem to be with me. I'll go by memory of what I thought I came up with, and then I'd like to, but you don't have this, Brett, this is the closest up to date, but not exactly, not everything's correct. Profit and loss, I don't may help you when we talk about the budget.
Right, because we talked about trying to put it in the budget Excel sheet so we can see it year-to-date spent
Right,
in
but
there.
well, I
But-
need a profit and loss that gives me more accurate, like right now, nothing in the Board of Finance is totally accurate in that. And the other
Okay.
thing is you have to be careful, like some people don't take their money until the end, like the troopers, you'll see they've only taken a small percentage of their money for the year, but they take it later. There's 4 nonprofits that have not taken their money yet, and I sent an email to Susan tonight asking her, I mean, like, one of them's a big one, it's Polk Lake neighborhood, like, do they ask for it? Do we just send it? You know, what's the,
I mean, I guess I'd be more concerned about our own town departments, because we know those groups are gonna get their money at some point during the year, unless they forget about it for some reason.
but one good thing we do have in the budget is we do have the actual from 2 years ago, right? So, right, so we have, when you look at the
Right,
budget, and if we can just work on the budget, not the, although you notice that we did have an increase in the revenue is up to 904,000 now with some things that we're doing at the transfer station. But if we look at the budget and expenditures, I was trying to come up with ways to knock this down without touching anybody that has not presented yet. So we know that the registrars, the library, the ambulance, and the rec is doing tomorrow night's presentations. But we have heard from the land use office, the highway department, and we've heard from the fire company. So we could look at those as also we've already looked at some things that were connected to presenters. One thing that has happened since the last time we met is Ivana has resigned her position with EDC.
Oh.
Her last week was last Saturday, and she's ready. So that will impact how we consider that $6,000 for EDC. So, but if we can look at the first page, and I don't mind if we do it this way, I'd like to go through the first page, tell you some things I was thinking, and then ask you some things that you might be thinking.
okay.
Can I just ask a follow-up question to
Sure.
Ivana resigning? Is that, does the EDC at this point plan on replacing that position?
They have not addressed that with us.
Yeah, so I have some comments on that when we get to that.
Yeah, okay.
So again, bear with me, but going through memory, the grant writer so far this year, we've spent $400. It doesn't seem like he has an appetite to do anything but a steep grant or road grant, and we don't have any right now, other ones we're already done. We have dropped that from 65 to 5. I'd be willing to drop that down again to a smaller number, either to like a $3,000 or a $4,000 number.
What would we do if something came our way? We got wind of something that was outside of those.
Well, we had that last year when Fuss and O'Neill was gonna do the stormwater, and it got voted down. That was $7,500. We could always go for an appropriation if it
Okay.
made sense. But we don't, and we have more people in town now that can do grant writing than we did in the past. Susan does some grant writing and Emily does some grant writing and, both Susans actually do some grant writing. So we might have, be able to do it in-house. And if we can't, we can do an appropriation if needed, but I don't see why carry that number if we're not going to use it there.
Mhm.
Any question of where you might want to put that number, or do you want to leave it alone?
I mean, I agree, if we can reduce it, we can. Part of me thinks I'd like to get all the other departments before we make major cuts, but I do agree, if you wanted to reduce it by what did you say, another?
I'd say either bring it down to 3,000 or 4,000, drop another 1,000 or 2,000 off it.
Yeah.
Would,
I-
if
I
you'd
can
rather
see-
not, we can wait.
I can see 3,000 and then,
So we drop it down to 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fine with 3.
then that way we do have something in there, so if we have to have some help on a grant or something comes up.
Okay. On, B 1.09, certifications and seminars, $1,500 under the Board of Selectmen. The only thing we did with that last year, and that we'll probably be doing again next year, is the CCM convention at Mohegan Sun, which it was supposed to be myself and Christine going. Hopefully next year it'll be myself and Laura. It's in November. And it's like 125 per person. And there's nothing, Laura, is there any seminars that you think you'll be going to or that you know of that, anything you planned? What is that?
Laura, can you just put your mic on? Sorry.
The only regularly attended would probably be GFOA. No, that's only a couple meetings
That's
a
the
year.
Government finance officer. So what, is that's not an overnight or anything, right? It's just a
No.
day meeting?
Just trying,
So what kind of dollars do you think we're looking at? Is there a registration fee? And typically it's
minimal.
minimal. So right now there's not a lot of money in that line, but I'd like to drop it from 1,500 down to 1,000.
I would
Okay.
agree with that, yeah.
Okay. And just again, just on this page. So attorney fees, they're $30,000 and they were 27,000 last year. Can you look at your profit and loss? Because if I remember right, and I don't have mine because it's on my desk, probably. I think it's a very low number right now.
What line is that?
B800. Again, this is just attorney fees for the town, not the land use office.
So we are at $4,286.
And we're 2/3 of the, at the end of February, 2/3 of the year, way through the year. So I'm just wondering if we shouldn't drop that down to $25,000. We're using less attorney fees than the previous administration was using. Again, if you want to wait on that, Brett and Nicole, that's fine, but I was just, for tonight's purposes, to try to get this number down some, I was thinking of dropping that to
So
25,000.
22, 23, we were at 27.
Right,
That's in-
but that was tying up a lot of loose ends with, and we did have some things in the 22, 23 with the demolition and with the conservation easement issues.
The tribal uh, recognition and
That's a s-
fees,
that's
that's a whole
separate
separate line
in here,
item, okay.
yes.
I'm comfortable bringing that. What did you say, 27 was the actual spend?
27, 155.
And that was,
That was 2 years.
you're
ago.
saying a couple of years?
Yeah, now we're at 4286.
Way down. I think there's a couple of bills that haven't gone through yet, but I would say I'd be comfortable going to 25,000, dropping 5,000 at this point. I don't see where we're using a lot of attorney time with, in the past they did.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, just underneath that is travel recognition, if that's what you're talking about on,
Yeah.
on B9. So attorney fees. So on B9, I have some good news to report, kind of, that the judgment just made on the recognition was denied. on the Eastern Pequots, but they can go back and go through, they can go through an appeal. But it's been denied for now, which is good news for us. Bad news is I'm sitting on a $51,000 bill that split three ways between us, Ledyard and Preston is, just roughly a little under $20,000 a town. But we're meeting with myself, the mayor of Ledyard, and Selectman Allen from Gothier from Preston, are meeting with the federal delegation tomorrow morning after the COG meeting. And then we have a Zoom meeting with the Attorney General tomorrow afternoon, just to see where we stand. And I sent a long email to Perkins Coie today saying, I had Nick Mullane in my office for quite a while today, and we talked about, I showed him the emails I received. And he said, back when Don Bauer was I don't know if you ever met, I think we did have a Zoom meeting with Don before he passed, that Perkins Coie had a partners meeting years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that said, it's not fair for small towns to carry the burden on things that will be nationally, the decisions will be weighed and looked at by other people. So why are towns like Preston and North Stonington paying that kind of money? The kind of money I'm talking about is over $1,000 an hour for these attorneys. They did 2.9 hours of, and we got a bill for $3,200. So I've told Perkins Coie I'm not happy with the bill. We were supposed to get quotes prior to them spending any money on tribal affairs. I appreciate all they've done in the past. They did wipe out that $62,000 bill last year because it was mix-ups with Don and what we were charged for and what we weren't. But we're going to stand our ground with Perkins Coie on this one. I'm going to try to get that bill down. If it's true that the recognition has been denied and it looks like it's not going to come back anytime soon, not tonight, but I'd be willing to drop that tribal recognition back down to 5,000 and then go for an appropriation if need be. But again, I need a little more time on that because of the meetings that are going to happen tomorrow.
I mean, I'm fine getting some more information before dropping it. If there is an appeal, I'd love to know just kind of timeline. If we think within the FY25 budget, we don't think that we're going to be back back fighting it, then I'm okay dropping it down to 5. It just makes me a little bit nervous.
So I want to see what kind of support we have from the AG and also from Murphy, Blumenthal, and Courtney. And if we're just pushing our money towards this $1,000 per hour group, and they're wonderful attorneys, don't get me wrong, but maybe not the right attorneys for us. They've been the attorneys from day one back in the 1990s. But when you're talking that kind of money, if they're just monitoring and we can have our own reps monitoring and our senators monitoring, then are we paying for something we don't have to pay for?
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for.
One would think that the state in general would front some of this, although I'm sure it's controversial, rather than, you're right, just the small towns that are directly impacted, but
Well, there's another town called Kent on the other side of the
Yep.
state, and they're dealing with the same thing with a tribe called the Scattergoats.
Yep.
And where obviously ours is more with the Eastern Pequots, so the historic Eastern Pequots. There's a long story that goes with it. But when you talk about Indian affairs, it's broken into basically three topics. One is the recognition of a tribe, which is in this case, the Eastern Pequots. One is trust land, which can a tribe go off reservation, own land, and then make it put into a trust so it's non-taxable? And then when that comes up, all three towns split that equally. When it's Eastern Pequots, we take half and the other two towns split the other half because it's mostly North Stonington. And then the third thing is third-party taxation, which is mostly Ledyard. It's when they tax the slot machines and they tax the stores that are in the mall that's over there, the shopping area. Because if it's a chain that's coming in, they pay Ledyard tax and they pay Mashantucket tax. And the Mashantucket is trying to get rid of the Ledyard part of it. One option by one of the senators is saying that we can do is we can increase Ledyard and Montville's monies to the Mashantucket Pequot Fund that we all get. And we get about $800 and something thousand. Increase Ledyard and Montville to offset that and then have all the other towns split what's left, which means we would take a hit if they did that. And there's nothing guaranteed that that would stay for long. It could be at the very next budget that gets knocked out again. Where the way it is now, Ledyard does get third-party taxation, and they don't want to lose that, but we don't pay for that. That's strictly Legend that pays for that. So those are the three parts of the Crooked Square watches for us.
So when, I think I know the answer to this, but when something like Great Wolf Lodge comes in, it's not owned by the Mashantuckets, but it's certainly on tribal land. So any taxes are paid to the tribe and the town. Well, I
The-
get, no,
the
so I
town's
know
able-
the answer to that,
Right,
right?
the town's
So
able
it's,
to also tax, and the reason they do that is because even though it's sovereign land, it's not a country within itself. It's because they don't have a school system. They use alleged roads, they use state roads, they use emergency services of people that might get in accidents, going and coming from the casino. There's a lot of reasons why Legend, North Stonington, and Preston get monies because of it's not, the Mashantucket property is just not self-sufficient. They don't have a hospital on site. They don't have, they said they don't have the school on site, so their children go to Legend. And Legend feels that the way they can get payback is through taxation. And they will be taxing Great Wolf Lodge, and it's probably why this is coming up now. I'm sure that the Mashantuckets don't want Great Wolf Lodge to be taxed.
I thought they weren't fully taxed on the tribal land. I thought like Lake of Isles is taxed because it wasn't technically tribal land.
Right, so the Mashantuckets are taxed by the town of Legend on third parties that come in, like chains, like, Polo.
Like the outlets.
Yeah. If it's a food chain, they can tax them on that, and Great Wolf Lodge is a chain. But the tribe is saying, hey, it's on our property. Why are they being double taxed? You can understand both sides. It's not our fight. At this point, it's Legend's fight, but we do support Legend because they support us on the Eastern Pequots and some other things, so.
Right.
Anyway,
so did we decide to wait to knock it down to 5 till this meeting?
I want to leave it alone, and then after the meetings tomorrow, and then at our next meeting, I can give you more background as far as whether we should leave it where it is or knock it back a little bit.
Mhm.
And that's basically all I had on the first page. And
I have a question on under town clerk, the B 1005. And I see that we're doing a $907 decrease. Do you know exactly what that money for ordinances is?
I don't know exactly, but Antoinette would be able to answer that question. So everything that she gave us, she's got information from the state, and that's why we had, you can see there's 4 reductions under the town clerk line.
I'll go talk to her, but I wonder if, because there are some ordinances I'm working on, I don't know if that affects that. Is it for advertising those ordinances or just changing them?
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't
so
have
I
the
can-
answer for that. I do know that we, on the COG, we're supporting a bill to drop public advertising in newspapers.
They tried to pass that last year.
It's cost, yeah, there's a big contingency of newspapers that don't want to lose that because it's a big pot. We ourselves, in this past year, we've paid over $6,000 in advertising for, in the newspaper, yet there's such a small readership now. Like maybe 10% of the people that live in town get an actual newspaper. We feel that we can do it on town websites and through social media just as well, but that's the fight,
Okay, well, I'll check with Antoinette just to see what goes in that line item because I know, so we were at 22-23, we're at 1745. And so far this year, I think we're a little over $1,000. So,
Yeah, so, and her numbers were given to me by her, so ask her that question. Sorry, I don't have the answer, Brett. And next page. And
So
Nicole, you have
just
anything on page
FYI,
one?
we're at a whopping $7,500.
Hey,
Less than we started.
yeah, we're just starting, right? Baby steps. So economic development, B 15.02.
right, so that's where I'm thinking about doing a reduction of $4,500. As I look up everything, and I know we were at for that line, right now we're at 3160 for the year. That was only ever approved for 1,500 and I will say that economic development coordinator, that's not what that position was. That was a different role that was just stayed in that line item. But if you go back through the minutes of Economic Development Commission over the past 2 years, they only ever approved to spend up to $1,500 for that position. The other $4,500 was for consulting services for the EDC part on the POCD, which was never utilized. So obviously they let or the coordinator part ate up that money, but that they never approved an additional expenditure over that $1,500 ever. And I think with the history of that, it was because at that time, our planner wasn't focused on economic development, even though that's part of that role. And that's why we combined the roles 6 years ago or so. So I'd like to reduce that by 4,500.
So bring it down to 1,500.
1,500 and still give them the option to use an admin assistant if they need hours to complete some of those tasks. Because basically, if Susan can't do some of the admin stuff, at least there's money in it to have somebody else do it, whether it's like we did before, whether it's Jennifer or somebody in that line to do some of that work. To give some hours.
And I wouldn't mind, I'm sure John wouldn't mind either, picking up a couple hours here and there to do some of that stuff.
Right.
It's just money in the budget. I
Because-
mean, that's how Ivana started doing it.
Right, because that was the way also it was presented, that it wasn't a new position, it wasn't an outside person doing it, it was someone that we already had, that we were gonna give some additional hours to, so.
I will say that when Ivana agreed to do it at the time, it gave a real boost to EDC because it was kind of, nothing was really going on at that time. We didn't have a planner. And I think the things that she did with the agricultural forum that I worked on, and then the farming group and the small business group and things that had fallen by the wayside, even the acknowledging, the small business of the week type of thing. I think those were all really good initiatives, but she's not there now. And I think that I agree, Brett. I think taking that money down, it makes sense. Where does the money that they're using for the old boards and commissions, is that coming out of operating expense?
No, that,
B15, is that coming out of there?
that usually comes out of their operating expenses, which they have $4,900 in there this year.
Right, so B15.
Yeah, B15. And they haven't used any. as
Right,
of
so
now.
that's March 21st.
Right. So even that 4,900 might be high unless they are, I know during COVID, it definitely put a dampener on some of the plans they were working on. And well, Nicole and I were on there then, that we didn't get to do a lot of those things. So I don't know what they have planned outside of those meetings.
Okay, but they do have money there too, so
They have
by dropping down the
$4,900, yeah.
1502 to 1,500, they still have money in the 15.00. You guys did get your invitations to that thing, right, on the 21st of March, I think it is?
Yeah, I think so. So that is really more just a networking event, right? I mean, so the
Yes.
goal of that, we're spending, so if that's a good portion of their operating expenses, and it's something that they do every year.
So, yeah, so when that first started, what it was to present to all boards and commissions, things the EDC were working on or in talking about how all boards and commissions are part of economic development for the town. We all have to be in it together, with the same enthusiasm. Back then there was a lot of talking about we weren't a business friendly town, and other boards would say those things. So we tried to bring all new, especially when there were new members, bring that together and talk about some of the stuff that was going on.
Yeah,
The
and
first two, we actually presented like demographics and things like that.
I think, I mean, I'm not opposed. I went to the one last year, I think, if it was last year at Bon Appetit.
And I think it was
2 years
2
ago.
years ago. I just don't remember there being a lot of structure to the meeting. So I think if we're gonna do that, I'd love to see some demographics and some data and maybe, a report out on what they're working on and how and what do they need from the other boards and commissions in town, rather than what seemed to me more of a social event. I think, so I'd like to see some more
Did
structure.
you go to the
to
one
it.
at Lake of Isles?
No.
Okay, so that
can't.
was,
That was our
It's
biggest
that
one.
one?
That was our,
That
that was our first one.
Wish I
that
would've-
was, Sector was involved in that, correct?
Well, Sector did the presentation for it.
Right,
Yeah.
and they're trying to get, so it was asked at the last meeting with Sam, like, well, what does Sector do? And he didn't know. I know what Sector does. But they can't do it unless you ask them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of
They
opportunity.
were
with-
very helpful to
They can
us
do
in some things
training,
that
we could do something in that room with it as far as
Yeah.
training. They can put on, meetings like this. They can give
And-
you slides with demographics.
And I
They-
think this is where Susan can come in and help them with some of that. But I mean, if we're going to, I don't know if somebody wants to maybe talk to Sam to see what the agenda is for the meeting. I think it's at Kingdom of the Hawk, right? It just, I'd love to just see it be a little bit more, informative and, what do they need from us?
Yeah, and it might be something that they want to look at doing every 2 years when you have new board
Yeah.
members and things like that. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what it was.
Having it every year, I think at this point just eats in. So
and
for
we
that reason, I'm supportive of dropping the operating expenses, knowing what their actual spend so far is.
You mean the 1502? Or are you talking
I'm,
about the
I
other one too?
mean, I mean the 1500, the operating expenses. If they've had a zero spend so far, 4,900 is a decent chunk of money. So, and I'm not suggesting dropping, maybe just to 4,000.
Okay. And I
But
can,
I am in favor as you of dropping the what they're asking for 6,000 again. I'm in favor, you're suggesting 4,500 for the 15.02.
I'm suggesting drop it by 4,500,
Oh,
drop to
oh, to
1,500. That was
1,500.
what's approved for the coordinator.
Okay,
Or the assistant.
okay. And that 1,500 would potentially fund some additional hours that possibly a town hall. Yeah,
So
I'm fine.
with the 1,500 line item, maybe it is worth talking to them again, because I don't know what the all boards is gonna run this year. It was usually around $1,000, $1,200 in the past. It might be more this year. Everything's up. And then those other additional monies years ago, so we haven't been on in 2 years, but some of that was for the planner to have outreach, right? To be able to go if there was a regional trade show about businesses, bringing business into town. Those were what we put some money in those operating expenses for in the past. So it might be worth Sam sitting down with Susan and say, look, on your side of the things, on the economic development side, what type of things do you think you might need some funding for? Because that's where it comes out. It doesn't, that part of the planner's budget doesn't come out of planning, it comes
Yeah.
out of the economic development.
I am definitely in support of outreach. I think that I would love to see some routine rotating visits, right? I mean, we talked about Little Man and you brought it up last time about how could we have done anything to assist and prevent the loss of that business in that whole section there? And
Yeah.
if we're rotating visits, I think maybe we could be a little bit more in tune to what their struggles are and how we might be able to steer them, how something like Sector could really help them get on track.
And that's what the economic development portion of that job is to be the outreach. And it
Yeah.
actually gives the planner a nice way to go into a business compared
Yeah.
to when there's an
An
zoning
issue and
issue,
they're,
right? So
they're
you
trying to
get
enforce,
to
yeah.
meet them on a pleasant note first,
Yeah.
and then if you have to deal with them, and that's why we always said it's almost like a good cop, bad cop
Yeah.
role. You hope it's mostly on the good side, but yeah, I think if Sam could sit down and say, what do you need? Because we talked about in the past, I think we ordered like table displays for them to have at a little trade show or things like that. So it's something for them to talk about, but if there isn't a plan, I do think we probably should even lower that line item like
Yeah.
Nicole mentioned.
So for operating expenses right now, do we want to drop it to 4,000 even? Or do we want to,
I'm o-
what do we want to do?
I'm okay with that for now.
Right, so it doesn't mean we can't go in the other direction. I mean, we have been known to put something back up
Yeah,
again.
absolutely.
Right, because they have a few months left and they still have the full
Yeah,
value.
Okay, so that goes-
Obviously, they are having the event, but then they're gonna have 3 months to spend the. And we don't, and that's one thing we always didn't want is end of year spending just to order things or.
By the way, Laura's laptop is being worked on right now to, well, not this minute, but today it was. And hopefully by the next meeting that she's here, that she'll be able to plug in the numbers as we're speaking and say, oh, by the way, now we're at this.
yeah, I'm trying to keep track. as
I'll,
we
I'll-
go.
I'll
Yeah.
make sure I email this to you tomorrow after I do it. So,
Yep, and 4,500. Yep. All right,
I'd like to skip recreation because they're not
Yeah.
presenting till tomorrow. Fixed charges are fixed charges, unfortunately. Election and town meeting is tomorrow. That's the registrars. Town hall expense. One thing I was gonna ask you is, so we got 85,000 and we spent 75,000 actual 2022-23. And this doesn't, don't forget in capital, we have $20,000 in capital for this building. If anything, I think this number might start going down, especially if the early learning center takes the second floor of it's not a guarantee, but we're trending that way. She's working on a grant now. If she takes the second floor of the two-story wing, there'll be a bigger percentage of utilities that she pays for. And this is basically just utilities and expenses for this building. It's not capital. It's fixing things, paying for oil, paying for electricity, and the school pays a portion. School actually pays 28.75%. The lease, early learners pays 12.75%. We pay the balance.
So is this, you're saying for the full B-22 line?
I'm saying B 2206. I would like to see if we can drop that down to 75,000. If you can look at your profit and loss year to date on that and see if it makes sense. We're 2/3 of the way through this at the end of February.
So we're at 30,
the North Swing Education Center expenses, I have $78.59.
B
Am I looking at
2206.
2206? Right? Is that what you're seeing, Brett?
no, the total is 38.
Sorry, gotcha.
But yeah, under, yeah, if you look at just
That was other.
2206, you're right, it just shows 78.59,
Yeah,
but
so
we're at
38
38,694.
38 and change.
And what percentage of that, of the whole is that?
That is 45%.
And we should be at the end of February, we should be at 66%.
I feel like I have Gary and Nemo in the
Oh
back
my
of
God,
head
I
chirping.
totally,
But I do, as I look around this building and as we talk about the library and all those things, I see the peeling paint, I see the wires hanging out of the wall. So there are things that we should do because we utilize this building. So I would hate. It's kind of, if you watch the Board of Ed meeting, you watch our meetings and you see what kind of cuts are, sometimes I worry that we're cutting so much to try to reduce our budget, but
So remember,
there's
this
certain
is,
things that we need to.
But I
remember this
don't-
is operating expense though, and we do have capital. If you look in capital, we have a line for this building.
But capital wouldn't fall under the painting. I don't believe.
Oh,
That's
well,
not-
but we also have in capital and in the budget, town building maintenance. And this is a town building. We have other places that we capture it. I just don't know if we want to keep capturing it when it comes to oil and electricity and those are kind of operating expenses. We can leave it where it is. I just see it as an
I-
opportunity.
I'm okay putting it down to just 80. I know you suggested 75. Are we comfortable going to 80 even right now?
I think the initial cut, why not go to 80 and then we can always readdress
Go
it.
back to it if we
And
have
as
to.
the capital committee meets and talks more, maybe more comes out of that as well.
Okay. I can support that. Social services, welfare, as I mentioned, this year's budget, I don't know if you have the color version or not. If you do, it's the ones in blue, and if you don't, it's the ones that are darkened. We just haven't got those asked yet, but in the past, we've always given them what sometimes they ask, sometimes they don't, but they know they get the same amount every year. We can reach out and say, hey, like New London Hospitality Center, haven't asked us for the $1,000, you still want it. We can make those calls. in case they don't exist anymore. But I was mentioning in the profit and loss, and I sent an email to Susan this evening that, like Pawcatuck neighborhood hasn't taken their money yet. And I don't know whether in the past we've just sent it to them or whether we asked for them to request it. But that's a big number. But going
But
forward,
they sent us an ask.
they
right?
did. But they sent us ask for this year, but they haven't taken their money from last year yet. And we're
Interesting.
2/3 of the way through the year. And I don't know whether they're just figuring, hey, North Stonington just hasn't sent it yet, or whether we're waiting for them to ask
So
for
the
it.
30,
Well, historically, do we know what they have done?
Well, that's my email to Susan
Okay,
tonight, was to ask her
okay.
that question. And we'll address this tomorrow when I see her.
I mean, it's,
yeah.
We
I-
already made some cuts in this area at the last meeting. We-
And I'm not comfortable making any more to this until we know the full, but because last time, remember, last year we made cuts and then I
We
went to
ended
the
up
Board
go
of
back.
Finance and we went back and we
Yeah.
asked to add back into the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center.
I thought, so I don't want to move off that if we're not done.
No, I'm good.
The Holly Green.
Yep.
What do we still own at Holly Green?
The senior center.
Oh, okay, sorry. Cause that condo, we sold that,
Sold,
right? Okay,
So the condo, the Holly Green, the town gets a reduced rate because because the town owns the building. But the association supplies the main driveway, it supplies all the water, pays for the parking lights.
okay.
So that's what that's for.
So we own the building, meaning the town owns
The
the
town owns the
building,
building.
the senior center building itself. Okay.
You actually sign that check monthly to Holly Green. It's the Holly HGCC check for $160 something, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I have nothing else on this page unless you want to talk about
The
something.
quarterly. Is Lisa continuing?
Yeah.
Yes, Lisa's continuing, and she has a gentleman, I think his name is Brian, that would work. He was a friend of Nita's, and he worked with them to coordinate the quarterly over the last year, and he's volunteered to stay on to help her. Just helping, he's not in name, but just help her do it. So that's where we are. We can look into some additional reduction in expense by looking at different printers and so on, but this is where we are with it now. I think she asked me to raise it by $100, if I'm not mistaken.
Did we, so in the information technology, did we get a breakdown? I know I asked, and I think you were gonna ask for a breakdown of our software maintenance.
I
and
haven't
software
yet, but
licensing.
I can have Quentin do that. Actually, if you want me to, I can have him do it and email you something.
Yeah, if he could just send a breakdown of what software that's,
I'll have him send it to both of you, so you both have the same information.
Are we beef 25.02, just looking at the P and L, are we at risk of going over budget for software maintenance
Where are we right now?
with 33,376 with a budget of only 37,200? We're at like
I
almost
think he's
90%.
I think he's done most of his work already since he's been here. There was a lot of updating when he came in and Jim had left. I think most of that has been done already.
Yeah.
Um,
So what are they asking for?
Any
So
increases,
we
the
kept
biggest
that
increase is in cybersecurity. But part of that was we took some of that out of a cybersecurity line last year. And didn't have it all in this budget, under his information technology services. So that's why it went from 6,200 to
Yeah.
14,000.
can you ask for a breakdown of that too?
The cybersecurity?
Yeah,
I think there's not a lot of breakdowns to that, Brett. I think it's basically you going through a company that's been doing it for us, and we can ask them if there's a way to quote it. But I don't know if you can quote that. If somebody does it for the state. I don't know if the state's involved, but I can ask them the question.
yeah. I didn't know if it's an outside company that we put bid or if it's one. company.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. The
Do we
DUI
hear-
grant ever coming back?
The what?
The DUI grant, we used to get some nice money from the state.
No, but we do have the rural roads grant that we had this year that Jason's been using to run ticket events and things like that.
Okay.
So public safety, we know that the Nelson Animal Association is going to be presenting tomorrow. The fire company already did. Troopers, we have, usually we get something for them, unfortunately, after we're already halfway or more than halfway through the budget. But I think that line is pretty consistent. We should be okay, especially since we brought in a younger, lower step trooper than we had that was here that left. So I think we might be okay there. You can, I couldn't find a lot on this page to move except for one area, and I think Sarah Nelson made a suggestion that we have a big number in snow removal overtime, and it's $56,100. And we know that seems like the way things work in the wintertime is changing, right? We're getting less snowstorms. I use my snowblower once in 2 years. And she thinks maybe it'd be smarter to have that number drop. And then if we have a crazy winter where we get a lot of storms, go for an appropriation, and everybody understand, like, of course you need an appropriation. Look at, we've had, 20 snowstorms this year. But the way it's been working so far, 2 years ago, we spent 26,808, and where are we on the P and Z? I mean, profit and loss now, Brett or Nicole, we can both look. It's 27,088.
27,088. 27,081
I
is
got-
snow removal.
No, I get highway overtime snow
Oh,
removal.
overtime is 27,084, and that's 2,000.
Oh, 088.
081.
081, that would be
28,000
28,000.
and change. With a budget of
49%.
56,000.
Yeah.
What number are you looking at?
Well, on our P and L, it's 27,081.
Okay, and on your budget, it's
It's
2708
27,088A.
B.
Oh, it's A and B versus,
So A is just overtime, B is snow removal.
So it's reversed on our P and L, so we probably.
Really?
Yeah, 081 is highway snow removal. 084 is highway overtime, so it's just listed
Okay,
reversed.
so
Yeah.
I'm seeing on the budget
Right.
on B 2708 B, I'll call it, it says highway overtime snow removal. We actually spent 26,808 2 years ago.
Yep.
56,100 last year, and we budgeted the same number this year. I'm thinking we don't need to budget that kind of number. If you look at the P and L now, what percentage are we used for overtime for snow removal?
almost 50%,
How much is it?
about 50%.
Yeah,
Brett,
49.9.
50%, and we're basically, what, a month from the end of winter, if we go to the middle of March?
So you want to lower to like 40?
I wanted to lower it to 40,000, and then if I go to 40,000 now, if we have to go over in any particular year, we can do an appropriation. And it's not when you have to sell, or we'll know that that there's been a lot of snow that year.
All right, and then on that one also, I have 2703 town garage expenses.
Okay,
Trying to remember from the presentation what was in there, but we haven't spent any of that money as of right now.
what are we at
So
now?
$22,000.
They're going to, I know he's looking to get grants to do some sort of a makeover at the highway garage. There's a couple of things when we don't have that we could use. One is a lift. Right now they have to put blocks underneath the truck to get, and then crawl in there to do work on the undercarriage of the truck. We don't have a lift in there. It would be pretty much a major undertaking to do a complete facelift on that part of the garage, the mechanic section of the garage. So they're looking for possible grants now to help the town in doing that. Maybe that's a question we can ask Donnie on that B 2703, what makes up the 22,000, and can that be dropped?
It looks like on the P and L, you've got 7642.
7,642 year to date.
But that's the total.
Right.
But the B 2703, yeah, the P and L is a little weird. The 2703 total town garage expenses other
Yeah.
budget is 22,000. We haven't spent anything.
Yeah, so, but the town garage expenses in general, total are 7,642 with a budget of 22,000. That it is weird how they do that. That's like other, which I don't know what that falls under, but in totality, it's 7,642. With an actual spend last fiscal year of about $14,000. So, I mean, at the very least, I'd feel comfortable dropping that to 20.
You
It is
want it?
weird how it's broken down. Like,
Is Alan
Yeah,
on the
looks like
line
the
right now?
Utilities are in.
Can you see Alan? Is he up there?
he was earlier. Yeah, he's there.
Alan, can you speak on this line for us on the town garage expense B 2703?
I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can. Actually, they can hear you across the street.
I don't remember exactly what that line item pays for. I was just trying to remember it, and I was gonna text one of you. I don't remember how that's broken down. It's been a
down.
few weeks since I looked at it.
It's on here as telephone, cell phones, electric, oil / propane, miscellaneous.
Okay, I'm not sure why nothing's been spent out of it yet. Then, to be honest.
No, it has. It's the. Yeah, 7,642 has been spent total.
So Alan, when I get bills in that, that reference, I said Brett said phones, oil, not fuel oil, but I mean, fuel oil, not automobile, gas and oil.
Yep.
That's what in electricity, that gets expensed through that 2703 line. So
Okay.
it's just operating expense. It's not buying pots. It's not, the fuel, like the gas for the gas tanks and things like that. So it's just basically the heat and, run the place with electricity. So
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't see why you couldn't drop it some. I mean, the more time we spend there for snow, it goes back to dropping the other budget as well. The more time you spend there, if it does snow more, then we're gonna spend more, of course.
We're probably on the, I don't know what I'm trying to say. With only about 35% spent so far, we'll probably end up around where we did for the actual 22, 23. So again, I'll propose right now to drop it to 20 even. I mean, I think we might be able to drop it a little bit more, but that makes me a little bit nervous, especially if we have electricity and oil in there
Yeah, so
with
we were at
inflation.
13,976 is
Yeah.
actual 2022,
Yeah,
23.
all right, so
and
we'll
we'll
drop
probably
it
end
to
up
20
there.
this evening, knowing that it could go lower if need be.
Yeah.
But we'll start at 20 and then that gives us still a buffer compared to 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'd
that-
agree.
Yeah, so we don't have individual budget line items for, it's just 2703, but in there, we don't know what makes up the,
But in the P and L, you see it.
right.
You see how they,
But the
all this-
miscellaneous is just, yeah, I guess I don't know why it reads 0 on that 2703 straight line.
because that must be just some other thing of other. I mean, I don't understand that either.
Okay.
Actually,
No, it's just the
No,
way
but-
the P and L looks.
but the whole, yeah, the whole budget is 22,000, so it is weird how it's got the $0. So we're gonna take that down to 20 right now
Yeah.
for
yes.
$2,000 savings. All right.
Okay, and we had some, reductions when we talked about the highway department, as far as the transfer station, and, you see those on additional revenue, and, we cut some expenses. So that, that's on the transfer station bulky waste. You can see where, contracting services went way down by 35,000. That's because we're going to do the hauling ourselves and we're no longer using Casella. That's why that's dropped.
And what's the tip? How many employees do we usually have there when we're open? It was 2, then we went to 3.
It's 2, except on Saturdays is 3.
Okay. So we're gonna continue the Saturday, 3 people?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else
Do
on
we
that?
know, I wanted to look at the Hewitt property, 2713.
Sure.
So there's an actual spend so far of only $248. With a $5,000 ask. It does look like they've spent a total of 3,000 and change in 22, 23. I'm just wondering if there are plans from the Hewitt property of things that they're planning to
What i-
do?
We talked about when the tenant was moving in that back entrance.
Yeah, that's on the capital. We have the money in capital to do that
Okay,
this
that's
coming
under
year.
capital.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll be doing
With
that
what?
hopefully in
The
this.
overhang was falling down.
Oh, yeah.
We have money in the capital for that for this coming year. It'll be done probably in the
Yeah.
spring, actually.
So
They-
wondering what the Hewitt
So
farm
they did-
property is using
They
that money.
occasionally do things with trail markings, things like that, but they also, I think the reason that was $3,000 that year is they redid the entire fence that was around the outside of the house. Remember?
Oh, yes.
I think Bill and Ed and maybe Seeger, Dick Seeger worked on that. And they got those round balls they had to order. I think that came out of that.
So maybe if you happen to see him and I have not made, their meetings are at 4 o'clock on a, like Monday
4:30
or,
on a Monday. I can
yeah.
ask them. They
it's
just,
hard for me to get to. It's one of mine that I had wanted to be on, but I'm just wondering if you can talk to him and see what they have coming down the pike and if we are comfortable dropping that to 4,000.
And I know they are putting new signage. One of the members is making new signs, but I don't know if he's billing the
The
group or
the
not.
group.
And they also, Susan and I had a discussion about this the other day. There is a Hewitt Farm fund that people can donate to, and there's money in there that they spend. So the question is, we don't get a report of that, and we don't authorize that, even though they're a town group. And that money is on our ledger, but we don't ever get any reports on that, and we don't approve any expenditures out of that. They do it themselves. So I told her I'd look into how that works statutorily, because it doesn't make sense if they're an appointed board that they can spend money out that we're custodians of, but it's a Hewitt Farm.
so how's that different than the cemetery commission when they buy flags and they buy
See, I
markers?
don't know, because the cemetery commission was a outside group before the town took them over.
Okay.
So I don't know how that transpired, and we don't really know how the Hewitt Farm transpired, but it might be similar when it's all said and done. Because if they're expending funds, but they have no authority other than really advising us, and we give them a budget, I don't know how that works. So I said, at least.
Because I think you see what with the cemetery commission, you see what they do. You know, they buy flags for Veterans Day, Memorial Day, they
Right.
buy markers, they cut the grass, they rewrite, and they pay people to do that in some of the cemeteries. So they actually have like 8 different accounts. you
Yeah.
know. But okay, if you're gonna look into that, that's great.
Do you want to leave Hewitt Farm at 5 for
Yeah, let me
now?
talk to Ed. I'll
Okay.
give him, I'll email him, I'll speak to him by phone tomorrow and let you
Okay.
know. Just in case they have some plans that we don't know about, and then Brett can check and see the proper way to do that. Anything else on this page that we need to talk about?
No, next page, though, the state mandated surveys. Is that an end of the year thing? B 2719, is that why we haven't spent anything out of it
B27.
for the transfer station? B 2719, state mandated surveys.
I don't know what that is, to be honest with you, unless Alan knows. I know that we do water sampling and testing 27.24, we do that. I don't know what the survey, oh, you know what? Excuse me, I do know. That the transfer station has to be surveyed yearly, and I've got on my desk, the gentleman who did it, he's been doing it for years, did it last year. And it's because of the bulky waste pile and where the bulky waste pile goes, and it has to stay within so many feet of the boundaries of the transfer station like that. It has to be surveyed on a regular basis.
Right, so, but we haven't spent anything yet this year, and we didn't spend anything in 22, 23.
I do have a note that Christine left me before, so it says, make sure you get a hold of these people before the end of the year. So maybe I haven't called them yet.
But nothing came out of that in
No,
22.
but we did do it last year. Nothing there last year either.
Nope. For that line item, 2719.
Hmm.
So it was 2,500 that year. We didn't spend anything. don't
If Alan's
think-
online, you don't have to answer Alan, but if you can just make a note to check that, or you can come by and see me tomorrow morning, I'll show you the line 2719, state mandated
And it
surveys.
could be a new survey that we didn't have to do in 22,
And
23.
maybe Donnie knows about it if you don't. We can look into it. Maybe Susan knows about it. Okay, thank you. What do we got? What else on this page?
So we're making an assumption that the library is continuing with their $100,000 ask
Well, they're coming tomorrow for a presentation, tomorrow night.
on the 2 million.
No, on the library.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
But they have submitted 100,000.
I got a verbal, they didn't submit.
Okay.
I verbalized it. I asked them whether when they were saying the same as last year, but she's gonna do a presentation tomorrow evening.
Okay. I don't necessarily have anything else on that.
I have a question. What are we gonna do about affordable housing?
I'd like to have it be an agenda.
Have
For
them
one of our
have it to a
meetings,
meeting?
and I'd like to just, I'd like to see what has been done, what are they working on? I know that there's certainly some dynamics between KNSA and affordable housing, but just, it seems silly to fund both. What do they
So
have?
they're at a $500.
Oh, okay.
It's not a big ask, but what they don't
But
spend, and then when they feel like they have to spend it, they had like a pizza party at the library last year to just be
Yeah,
informative, but
yeah, I'm just,
it was really just a way to spend money. It didn't
So
make
where are they now? 3409. They're at,
$500.
they haven't spent anything yet.
And the 153.87 they spent the year before was that one get together at the library.
do we have a meeting where we could, who is the chairman?
Will Mason, they can come to the meeting on the 5th if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see if maybe they can come and talk about what I'd like to hear a rationale for why we should continue to fund them.
Okay.
I think that's all we can do until we
Yeah,
hear from.
so
the
you
other-
want to hear the grand total?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'll give you a real one tomorrow too.
$36,000.
But you know, when you're talking about
Nickel and diming.
if you look at a small budget, $36 does move the needle a little bit.
Okay. What they spent on the baseball fields.
So put it this way, $36,000 with 313,683, it brings us under 300,000 in the, right, so. And if you take that 300,000 and the capital increase of 223,000, that's basically, we're at 500,000 and we have 904,000 of additional revenue. So I will say this, I'll make this in a meeting that's been recorded and I'll live by it. The last few years, when the Board of Finance have come to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed and said, we need you to cut your budgets and we'd like you to do it in this way. We need you each to lose X number of dollars. And 2 years in a row, the Board of Selectmen have gone out of their way to take a bigger portion. I think we did it last year, we did it the year before.
We did it with capital.
We took the hit and we said, we're going to take the hit because we know that the Board of Ed, maybe it was the second social worker or second, whatever it was, math specialist. But we took the additional hit, even though we have a budget that's only 1/3 the size. This year we can't. I think this year we should
Well, no,
switch.
we're kind of locked, we're kind of locked in with capital. We can't continue that's not
So
sustainable.
I think after
I-
2 years of the Board of Selectmen taking the head, I think this year is the year we can't. And if anything, the Board of Ed should do it to return the favor this year and let them knock something out. So, because we can't afford to keep cutting our budget so low that we can't give the services that we tell the taxpayer
Yeah.
we're gonna give. I know there's a Board of Finance
Yeah,
here
I
now,
mean-
Ben has mentioned, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Thank you.
I mean, because we're approaching capital in a different way, that is going to be a lot harder to do.
And I also think that we go through this budget line by line and try to make little cuts to amount to stuff. And, you know, yes, we're only a small portion of the overall budget and the Board of Ed is long, but I agree. We painstakingly go through this and, I do think sometimes we try to cut so much to make a difference, yet we have things that we do need to accomplish and pay for. So
Agreed.
sometimes it's to our detriment that we do it,
Okay,
but
so,
we have the taxpayers to answer to, and I think looking at between capital, whatever happens with the library and the Board of Ed, there could be a potential pretty large tax increase unless we all do our part to reduce before it goes to town meeting.
are we comfortable to move on to number 11 then at this point?
Yeah.
If we are, who'd like to do tax refunds this evening?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve tax refunds totaling $3,596.61 for Toyota Lease Trust, Chelsea Groton Bank, Jason and Christine Wagner, and Mary Ann Buckley.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of this tax refund, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll sign those and give those to Jen. Any public comment on anything, non-agenda items, anything we spoke about this evening? Anything online? Laura, you see any hands up online? No, nothing, Carl? Okay. As you know, our next meeting is tomorrow. It's a joint meeting with the Board of Finance, which will have those additional 4 presenters. And I will, Nicole, I made some notes on some of the other few you want to speak about. And then our next regular Board of Selectmen meeting after that will be March 5th. Just nothing else. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, so I see adjournment at 8:14. Thank you.
Rod said